The colony was quiet that afternoon, the kind of silence that felt heavy in the air, broken only by the buzz of insects and the low hum of distant machines. In the middle of that silence, Ethan sat on his small porch, wiping the oil from his hands after repairing an old generator. Life on the edge of the galaxy was never easy, but he had grown used to the rhythm of work, rest and long evenings spent alone every day at the same time. The alien mail carrier arrived. Her name was Lira, though Ethan had only learned it by glancing at the signature on the colony's delivery log. She was tall, graceful, with skin that shimmered faintly under the sun. Like glass filled with liquid light, her silver hair was tied back neatly, and strange glowing patterns ran across her arms, shifting like living tattoos usually. She moved quickly, handing over letters, parcels, and official colony notices with barely a word before disappearing down the dusty road again. But today, something felt different the moment she stepped out of her small hover cart. Her steps were uneven, her eyes bright, and her breathing heavier than usual. The air around her almost seemed warmer. Charged with a strange energy, Ethan stood slowly, wiping sweat from his forehead as he noticed her fumbling with the mail pouch. A few letters slipped through her fingers and scattered on the ground. That had never happened before. She was always precise, always controlled. Now her hands trembled as though she was fighting something invisible. "You okay there?" Ethan asked, his voice cautious but kind. Lira froze, her glowing eyes snapping up to meet his. For a long moment she said nothing, only stared at him, her chest rising and falling quickly. Then almost too softly she answered, "It is nothing. Just the heat." But Ethan didn't believe it. The colony was hot every day. The kind of heat that made sweat stick to your back and dust cling to your skin. Yet she had never looked like this before. He bent down, picked up the letters she had dropped, and held them out to her. Her fingers brushed his as she took them, and for some reason his heart skipped a beat. That touch felt strange, warmer than normal. Almost burning, she quickly pulled her hand back, clutching the letters tightly, her glowing patterns flaring brighter for just a second. Ethan's brow furrowed, his instincts whispering that something was very wrong. As she handed him his daily mail, Ethan noticed she lingered. Normally she would leave immediately, turning without a word, but today she stood there silent, her gaze fixed on him in a way that made him uneasy. It wasn't anger and it wasn't fear. It was something else, something he couldn't name. "You sure you're fine?" he asked again, his voice lower now. Lyra's lips parted as if she wanted to answer honestly, but then she shook her head and forced a small smile. "I must finish my route," she said, but her voice trembled, and before Ethan could respond, she climbed back into her hovercart and sped away, the vehicle kicking up clouds of red dust behind her. Ethan watched her go, the letters still warm in his hands. His gut told him this was not the last strange encounter. The way her glowing patterns had flared, the way her breathing quickened, something deep inside him whispered danger. And yet mixed with that danger was curiosity that night. The colony's usual bar chatter was filled with gossip. Two miners at the far table whispered loudly, just enough for others to hear. "Did you see the mail carrier today?" one asked. Her glow was brighter, wasn't it? "You know what that means?" The other leaned in, lowering his voice. "Mating season. It's starting." The word sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. He had heard rumors before, stories about her species during this time, about instincts they could not control. Most humans avoided being near them when that season came, because if they chose you could not escape. Later that evening, Ethan sat by the dim light of his lamp, staring at the unopened mail on his table. He tried to focus on the words on the paper, but his mind kept drifting back to her trembling hands, her glowing eyes, the way she had lingered just a moment too long. And then, as the desert wind howled outside, he swore he felt it, that strange warmth again, like the echo of her touch still burning in his skin. He shook his head, muttering to himself, "Get a grip, Ethan. She's just the mail carrier." But deep down, he already knew something had changed today. Something was coming, and no amount of denying it would make it go away. As he closed his eyes, a final unsettling thought crept into his mind. What if tomorrow's delivery was stranger than today's? The next morning came with the same heat, the same dry wind carrying dust across the colony's metal roofs. But for Ethan, the world felt different, heavier, as if the strange moment from yesterday still hung in the air. He worked on repairing a broken solar panel outside his workshop. Yet his mind was far away, replaying the image of Lyra's glowing eyes staring at him, trembling like she was fighting against herself. He told himself to forget it. She's just a mail carrier. Ethan, nothing more, he muttered, tightening a loose bolt, but deep down he knew something was wrong. Something that went beyond a casual delivery. By noon, the hum of the hover cart reached his ears again, the sound rolling through the dusty street like a warning bell. His chest tightened and his tools slipped from his hand. He looked up and there she was again, Lira stepping out of the cart, her shimmering skin brighter than ever. Her movements were restless, sharp, like someone who couldn't keep still. Today she didn't fumble with the letters. Instead, she carried them firmly but didn't hand them over right away. She stood in front of him longer than usual, her breathing quick, her glowing patterns flickering across her arms like waves of fire. "You're late," Ethan said lightly, trying to break the tension. But her answer came slow, almost distracted. "I had to take a longer route," the others noticed. "The others?" Ethan asked, frowning. Lira hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the distant colony watchtower. Then back to him. "It does not matter," she whispered, pushing the letters into his chest more forcefully than needed. Her hand brushed against his again, and this time the warmth was stronger. It felt like fire racing under his skin. Ethan quickly stepped back, startled. But Lira only tilted her head, her gaze locking onto him. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a grimace. "Does it bother you?" she asked softly. Ethan swallowed hard. "What are you talking about?" Lira didn't answer, only turned sharply and walked back to her cart. But before leaving, she paused, glanced back at him once more, and said, "It will get worse." Her words lingered in his mind like poison. What did she mean? Worse than what? That night, Ethan sat at the bar trying to drown the unease with cheap synthetic ale. The colony was buzzing with gossip, and every table seemed to whisper the same thing. "The carrier's glow is brighter," someone muttered. "Her season's here, stay away from her," another warned. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his stomach turning, because he knew she wasn't staying away from him. She was drawing closer. One of the older colonists, a scarred miner named Harlan, slammed his mug on the table and leaned toward Ethan. "You live near the edge, don't you? She delivers to you first?" Ethan nodded slowly. "Then you better watch yourself, boy," Harlan growled. "Her kind, when the season hits, they don't choose randomly. If she lingers near you, if she touches you, then it's already too late." Ethan forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow. "Too late for what?" Harlan leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "For her to claim you." The words hit Ethan like a punch. He left the bar soon after, the chatter echoing in his head. The desert wind felt colder than usual as he walked home. When he reached his porch, he froze because there she was, Lira, standing in the shadows near his door, silent, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "What are you doing here?" Ethan demanded, trying to keep his voice firm. She stepped closer, the glow of her skin casting faint light on the dusty ground. Her voice was low, trembling, but sharp. "I tried to stay away, but I can't." Ethan's heart raced, every instinct screaming at him to retreat, but his feet stayed rooted to the ground. Lyra's hands clenched at her sides, her breathing harsh. "You don't understand," she whispered. "It isn't me, it's inside me. It chooses for me." Ethan shook his head. "You need to leave, before people see you here." But she didn't move. Instead, her glowing patterns flared even brighter, and for a moment it looked like fire was crawling under her skin. "I'll deliver again tomorrow," she said finally, her voice breaking as though she was both promising and threatening. Then she turned and walked into the night, her glowing figure fading into the shadows until only the dust remained. Ethan stood frozen, his fists clenched, his breath heavy. His mind screamed at him to run, to report her, to lock his door and never open it again. But another part of him, buried deep, whispered something dangerous. What if she really had chosen him? He closed his door, but sleep never came. Because outside in the desert night, he swore he saw a faint glowing silhouette watching his house from the distance, waiting.
Ethan woke up the next morning with heavy eyes. He had hardly slept. Every creak of his small house, every whisper of the desert wind outside, had made him jump, and in his half-dreams he had seen glowing eyes watching him through the window. By midday, he forced himself back to routine, repairing a broken water pipe that ran behind his workshop. He kept telling himself that everything was normal, that yesterday was only in his head, but deep down he knew things had already changed. The hum of the hover cart came earlier than usual. Ethan stiffened, wiping his hands quickly on a rag. Normally, Lira parked by the gate, dropped off his mail, and left. But this time he didn't hear the usual sound of her steps on the gravel. Instead, the door creaked open. Ethan turned sharply, and there she was, standing in his doorway, holding the pouch of letters. Her glowing patterns were brighter, crawling across her arms and neck like living fire. She didn't ask permission to enter. She simply stepped inside, her presence filling the room. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, his voice sharp. She ignored the question, her eyes scanning the small workshop with slow curiosity before landing on him again. "I finished my route early," she said softly, though her voice shook. "I needed to come here." Ethan felt his chest tighten. There was something in her tone, not casual, not professional, something closer to desperation. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "People will see." "No one followed me." She cut him off quickly, stepping closer. "I made sure of it." Ethan took a step back, his hand brushing against the workbench, searching for balance. Her presence was overwhelming, the glow of her skin casting strange shadows on the walls. The air itself felt thicker, warmer, like her very body was heating the room. She placed the letters on the table, but instead of leaving, she pulled it out the empty chair and sat down, like it was her own home. Her glowing eyes never left him. "You don't understand," she whispered. "When the season starts, we don't choose. Instinct chooses. It pulled me here, to you." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He shook his head, trying to force a laugh. "You've got the wrong person. I'm just a mechanic. I'm nobody." But she leaned forward, her hands gripping the table so tightly, the metal frame groaned. "You think it cares who you are? It doesn't," she said, her voice almost breaking. "It only knows that you are the one." Silence filled the room. The only sound was the low hum of the machines outside, and Ethan's pounding heart. He wanted to argue, to push her away, but every time her glowing eyes locked on him, the words died in his throat. "You need to leave," he said finally, forcing strength into his voice. For a moment she looked like she might resist, but then she stood, slowly, her expression unreadable, her patterns dimming slightly. She walked to the door, paused, and whispered without looking back, "You'll understand soon." Then she slipped outside, leaving only silence and the faint trace of her warmth in the room. Ethan collapsed into the chair she had left behind, his hands shaking. The smell of her still lingered in the air, sharp and sweet, and for the first time, he realized how real this danger was. This wasn't just gossip or rumor. This was happening, and it was happening to him. That evening, as the sun bled across the horizon, Harlan, the scarred miner from the bar, showed up at Ethan's porch. "You've seen her, haven't you?" Harlan asked bluntly. Ethan hesitated but finally nodded. "She came into my house today," he admitted. Harlan cursed under his breath, gripping the railing tightly. "Then you're already in it deeper than you think," the old miner growled. "When their instinct chooses, there's no turning back. If she's visiting you in private, if she's lingering in your home, then boy, you're the one she's claimed." Ethan's throat went dry. "And if I don't want it?" he asked. Harlan shook his head. "Doesn't matter. Instinct doesn't ask. Instinct takes." That night, Ethan locked every window and bolted the door, but when the desert winds howled outside, he heard something else mixed in. A soft, rhythmic sound, like footsteps circling his house. He froze, holding his breath. Then, just as quickly, the sound faded into silence. Hours later, as he lay awake in the dark, he heard a whisper through the window, low, trembling, almost pleading. "You can't hide from this, Ethan." His blood ran cold. He didn't dare move, didn't dare open the curtains, but deep down he knew. This was only the beginning, and the unexpected visit today was nothing compared to what was coming next. The next day began with unease. Ethan's hands moved over his tools, but his mind refused to focus. The memory of Lira sitting in his chair, her glowing eyes fixed on him, haunted every corner of his thoughts. He told himself to work, to keep busy, but every sound outside made him turn his head sharply, expecting to see her again. By mid-morning, the colony square was busier than usual. Merchants argued over prices, children ran between stalls, and workers unloaded crates from the supply ships. Ethan tried to blend into the crowd, hoping the noise would drown out the storm in his mind, but whispers followed him wherever he walked. "Did you see her glow?" one miner muttered. "She's restless this season," another replied. "Best stay out of her way." Their voices lowered when Ethan passed, but their eyes lingered. They knew, he realized with dread, they knew she was circling closer to him. At the far end of the square, Ethan spotted Elder Merrick, the colony's oldest voice. The man leaned heavily on a carved staff, his weathered skin carrying the stories of decades in the desert. If anyone knew the truth about Lira's people, it would be him. Ethan approached, and the elder's sharp eyes caught him immediately. "You've been visited," Merrick said. Before Ethan could even speak, Ethan froze. "How do you know?" Merrick gave a humorless chuckle. "The glow lingers on you. Her kind leave a trace when they touch. Others may not see it, but I do." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "Then tell me what this means. What's happening to her?" The elder's expression grew grim. "Her season has begun. For her kind, instinct is stronger than will. Once it awakens, they cannot fight it, and if it directs them to a human, that human is bound, whether he wants it or not." Bound, the word cut deep. Ethan shook his head. "But I didn't choose this." "No," Merrick said, his voice heavy. "But she did not choose either. It is the curse of her bloodline. When instinct speaks, there is no escape." Ethan clenched his fists, frustration rising. "Then what do I do? Hide? Leave the colony?" Merrick tapped his staff against the ground, his voice sharp. "You cannot run. If she has fixed on you, she will follow, through storms, through darkness, through walls. Distance will only make her more desperate." The warning sank into Ethan's bones like ice. His throat felt dry as he whispered, "Then I'm trapped." The elder studied him with pity. "Perhaps, or perhaps this is a test, boy. Some bonds bring ruin, others bring survival. The choice is not yours, but the outcome may still be." Before Ethan could reply, a sudden commotion rippled through the market. Two colonists pushed past, arguing loudly. "She was here," one shouted, "glowing like a beacon standing by the edge of the square." Ethan's heart lurched. He spun and caught a glimpse at the edge of the crowd. Lira, her silver hair catching the sunlight, her glowing patterns brighter than ever. She wasn't delivering mail. She was standing still, watching him, even across the distance. Her eyes locked onto his, burning with something that made his stomach twist. The elder's grip tightened on Ethan's arm. "Do you see? She ignores her duty now. You are her duty." Ethan pulled free, panic racing through him. The whispers of the crowd swelled, sharp and cutting. "Why him? Humans can't handle that bond. It'll destroy him." Unable to take the stairs, Ethan left the square quickly, pushing through the crowd, his breath uneven, but he could feel her eyes on his back until he vanished down the alleyways. That evening, when he returned to his home, he found something that froze him in place. On his doorstep lay the mail pouch, but it wasn't filled with letters. Instead, it carried a single folded paper. He picked it up with trembling hands. Unfolding it slowly, inside was a message written in her alien script, glowing faintly as if alive. Though Ethan couldn't read the symbols, one thing was clear. Drawn at the bottom was her handprint, pressed in luminous ink, a mark of claim, a sign that every colonist knew too well. Ethan stumbled back, dropping the paper, his chest tightening. This was no longer rumor, no longer whispers. She had declared him hers. That night, he bolted his doors and windows tighter than ever. But as he sat in the silence of his workshop, he realized the locks meant nothing. Her instinct wasn't just knocking at his door anymore. It had already stepped inside his life, and somewhere, out in the desert night, Lira whispered his name to the wind, her glowing patterns flaring against the darkness like a beacon. She would not stop, not now. Not until instinct was fulfilled. Ethan buried his face in his hands. The elder's warning echoed in his head. "You cannot run. She will follow." The storm rolled in from the desert without warning. Dark clouds swallowed the stars, and hot winds whipped across the colony, carrying sharp sand that rattled against walls and windows. Most colonists rushed into safe shelters, making their homes tight. But Ethan sat by his lamp, staring at the glowing handprint she had left on his doorstep. It still pulsed faintly, as if alive, mocking him with its silent claim. He told himself not to open the door for anyone, not tonight, not with the storm raging, but his heart pounded because deep inside, he knew she would come. And then it happened. 3 sharp knocks on his door, drowned quickly by the roar of the wind. Ethan froze, his breath stuck in his throat. The knocks came again, harder this time, desperate. He stood, his hand hovering over the lock. "Don't do it," he whispered to himself, but his fingers moved anyway. The door swung open, and there she was, Lira, soaked in sand and storm, her silver hair loose and wild, her glowing patterns blazing brighter than he had ever seen. Her chest rose and fell with every labored breath, her body trembling, and before Ethan could speak, she stumbled inside and collapsed against the wall. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice sharp but shaky. She looked up, her glowing eyes filled not with pride, but with something close to fear. "I couldn't fight it anymore," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I told myself to stay away, to protect you, but every step I take, every breath, it drags me back here, to you." Ethan's heart pounded. He took a step back, his fists clenched. "You need to leave, before someone sees you." But she shook her head violently, clutching her arms as though holding herself together. "They already know," she said, tears mixing with the dust on her cheeks. "The colony whispers, but they don't understand. They never will. They only fear us." Her words cut through the roar of the storm outside. She moved closer, her trembling hand reaching out, but stopping just short of touching him. Her voice dropped lower, trembling. "It's you, Ethan. My instincts. They chose you. I didn't want this, but I can't stop it. I can't fight it anymore." The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in as her confession filled the air. Ethan's throat tightened, anger and fear mixing inside him. "Why me?" he asked, his voice rough. "I'm just a mechanic. I have nothing. Why not anyone else?" Her lips trembled into a broken smile. "Because instinct doesn't care for reason. It doesn't look at wealth or power. It looks deeper into something we cannot see, and when it finds what it wants, it never lets go." Ethan turned away, pacing the small workshop. He wanted to deny her words, to push her out into the storm, but his mind replayed every moment, her trembling hands, her lingering stares, her glow flaring when she touched him, and now her voice, raw and fragile, confessing what he had feared all along. "Do you know what this means?" Lira continued, her voice steadier now. "If I resist, it will tear me apart. If I give in, it binds us both. I'm trapped, Ethan, and so are you." Ethan's hands shook as he gripped the edge of the table. His heart screamed to run, but his body refused to move. He looked at her, standing in his workshop like a storm-given shape, beautiful, dangerous, unstoppable. "You're asking me to accept something I never wanted," he said bitterly. Lira lowered her head, her silver hair falling over her glowing face. "I'm not asking," she whispered. "I'm warning, because soon, choice won't matter." The wind howled louder, rattling the windows. Lightning flashed across the desert sky, painting her glowing patterns in silver fire. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Only the storm outside and the storm inside the room existed. Finally, Ethan broke the silence, his voice raw. "If this is true, then what happens next?" Lira lifted her head, her eyes locking onto his, burning with both sorrow and hunger. Her answer came like a blade through the dark. "Next, the season takes me. And if you don't turn me away now, it will take you too." Her words hung in the air, heavy and final. The storm roared outside, but the louder storm was the one inside Ethan's chest. He knew this was no longer about avoiding her. This was about survival, about resisting something older and stronger than either of them. And yet, as he looked at her trembling hands, her glowing skin, her desperate eyes, he wondered if he even wanted to resist anymore. The storm did not calm. It raged through the colony like an angry beast, shaking walls and howling through the streets. But inside Ethan's workshop, another storm brewed, silent, heavy, and far more dangerous. Lira stood in the middle of the room, her glowing patterns alive with heat, crawling across her skin like fire beneath glass. Her breathing was uneven, her fists clenched as though she fought against invisible chains. Ethan backed away slowly, his body tense, every instinct telling him to run. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, not tonight. "You need to control this," Ethan said firmly, though his voice trembled. Her glowing eyes snapped toward him, sharp and pained. "You think I haven't tried?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "I've fought it every moment since it began. But tonight? Tonight is the peak. There is no control now." Lightning split the sky, flashing through the windows. For a second, the light caught her face, half desperate, half something far darker. Her glow brightened so much that the shadows in the room vanished, leaving no place to hide. Ethan grabbed a heavy wrench from the table, not to hurt her, but to give himself some kind of shield. Lyra's gaze softened when she saw it. "I don't want to harm you," she said, her voice shaking. "But if you push me away, my body won't listen. My instinct will break through the door, the walls, anything. You don't understand, Ethan. It doesn't stop." The wrench felt useless in his hand. He lowered it slowly, his chest heaving. "What do you expect me to do?" he asked bitterly. Her eyes glowed brighter, locking onto him with unshakable focus. "Stay," she whispered. "Stay with me through this night. If you leave, if you resist, I don't know what I'll become." Silence pressed down on them, broken only by the thunder outside. Ethan's throat felt dry, his heartbeat too loud in his ears. The logical part of him screamed to throw her out, to bar the door. But another part, the one that had felt her trembling hands and seen her tear-streaked face, kept him frozen. She stepped closer, slowly, like a predator circling prey. Yet her eyes were filled not with hunger but with something more fragile. Her hands trembled as she reached out, stopping inches from his chest. "Every time I touch you, the fire calms. Just a little," she admitted, her voice almost pleading. "Please, Ethan, don't make me face this alone." His breath caught. The air felt heavy, charged, as though the storm outside had broken into the room. He should have stepped back, but he didn't. Instead, he whispered, "And if I do this, what happens after?" Lyra's lips parted, her voice trembling. "Then the bond seals. You won't belong to yourself anymore. You'll belong to me, and I will belong to you." Her honesty was terrifying, yet her desperation was real. Suddenly, a loud crash shook the workshop. The storm had torn loose a piece of the roof. Rain and sand burst inside, whipping against them. Lira flinched, clutching her head, as though the storm's fury echoed her own. Her glow flared dangerously, filling the room with blinding light. Ethan rushed forward instinctively, grabbing her shoulders to steady her. The moment his hands touched her, the light dimmed, the heat in the room easing slightly. Her body shuddered under his grip, and she gasped, her eyes wide. "See," she whispered, "you're the only thing keeping me from burning alive." Ethan's heart pounded, his mind spinning. He wanted to let go, but she clung to him, her fingers digging into his arms. Thunder roared, lightning flashed, and the storm outside became nothing compared to the storm between them. Minutes stretched into eternity. Her breathing slowed, her trembling eased, but her grip did not loosen. Instead, she leaned her forehead against his chest, her voice muffled but clear. "If you stay tonight, Ethan, nothing will ever be the same again." Ethan stood frozen, the weight of her words sinking deep. Outside, the colony's alarms wailed faintly in the distance, warning everyone to remain indoors. But here, in this locked room, the real danger was already inside, holding him, glowing against him, whispering promises he didn't understand. As the storm raged louder, Ethan realized this night would decide everything. Whether he would fight against a bond no human had ever survived, or surrender to it, and face whatever came with the morning light. For now, He only tightened his grip, unable to let her fall apart, but his final thought before the thunder drowned it all was chilling. Tomorrow, the colony would know, and nothing could stop what had already begun. The storm finally broke at dawn. The first light of morning spilled across the colony, touching broken roofs and streets covered in dust. The air was heavy with silence, the kind that follows after chaos. But inside Ethan's workshop, the silence was heavier still. He sat slumped against the wall, exhaustion pulling at every muscle. Across from him, Lira rested with her eyes closed, her glowing patterns dim and faint. No longer raging like fire, her breathing was calm now, steady, as though the storm had drained all of its fury from her body. Ethan rubbed his hands over his face, trying to steady his thoughts. The night replayed in his head like a fever dream. Her desperation, her trembling hands, the way her glow had dimmed only when he touched her, and the words she had whispered. "If you stay tonight, nothing will ever be the same again." He should have been terrified. He should have pushed her away, locked his door, refused to let instinct bind him. But the truth was harder to accept. He had stayed, and now everything felt different. The quiet was broken by the sound of footsteps outside. Voices whispered just beyond the window. The colony was waking, and the rumors were already spreading. "She spent the night there," someone muttered. "It's true. She's chosen him." Ethan's stomach twisted. There would be no hiding it now. Lira stirred, opening her glowing eyes slowly. When she looked at him, there was no fire, no storm, only a tired softness, a fragile calm. "You stayed," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Ethan nodded stiffly. "I didn't have a choice." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "That's what you think." Before he could answer, a loud knock rattled the door. "Ethan!" a voice shouted. It was Harlan, the scarred miner. "Open up, we know she's in there." Ethan froze, his fists clenching. If he opened the door, the whole colony would see. If he didn't, the rumors would only grow worse. Lira stood slowly, her glow flickering faintly. "They won't understand," she murmured. "To them, this is dangerous. To them, I'm dangerous." Ethan swallowed hard, then moved toward the door. When he opened it, Harlan stood with 3 others, their faces lined with fear and suspicion. "You fool," Harlan growled. "You let her in, didn't you? Don't you know what that means? Once her kind chooses, there's no turning back. She'll consume you, boy. She'll drag you down with her." Ethan's jaw tightened. He looked back at Lira, standing behind him with her head bowed, her glow dim but steady, and then he turned back to the others, his voice firm. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's dangerous. But last night, she could have burned this whole place down, and she didn't. She stayed because of me, and I stayed because... I couldn't let her face it alone." The miners exchanged uneasy glances, their whispers sharp and fearful. But Harlan's eyes narrowed, studying Ethan for a long moment, before he finally spat on the ground and turned away. "Then whatever happens next, it's on your head," he muttered, walking off, the others following reluctantly. Ethan closed the door, his heart pounding. The workshop felt smaller now, but safer. When he turned, Lyra's eyes were wide, shimmering with something he hadn't seen before. Gratitude, and something deeper. "You defended me," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I don't know why. Maybe because I'm tired of running from this. From you." For the first time, she stepped forward without trembling. Her hand reached his, warm but no longer burning. Her glow was calm now, soft, like the quiet after lightning. "You don't understand what this means, Ethan," she said softly. "When the season ends, the bond will remain. You'll carry it for the rest of your life. You'll carry me." Ethan looked into her glowing eyes, and instead of fear, he felt something unexpected. Acceptance. Maybe it was madness. Maybe instinct had already trapped him. But as the desert sun rose higher, spilling golden light across her silver hair, he realized something. He didn't want to let go. The colony would whisper, would judge. But out here, on the edge of the galaxy, they both had been outcasts in their own way, and now, bound by instinct and choice, they had found something neither of them expected. Not just survival, but a strange, fragile trust. Ethan squeezed her hand, his voice steady. "Then I guess we'll carry each other." Lyra's lips parted in a small, genuine smile. Her glow brightened just enough to light the room, warm and steady, and for the first time, the storm inside her seemed truly calm. Outside, the colony watched with wary eyes. But inside that workshop, a new bond had been sealed. Unlikely, dangerous, unexplainable, yet unbreakable. And as the desert winds carried away the last traces of the storm, Ethan whispered to himself with a faint smile, "I thought I was losing my mind. But maybe I just found something worth keeping."